A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson is a detective story about high school student Pip Fitz-Amobi who, for a school project, decides to investigate the closed 5-year-old case of Andy Bell's disappearance and the alleged suicide of her boyfriend Sal Singh, who was blamed for her murder. Pip doesn't believe the official story. Alongside Sal's brother Ravi, she unravels a complex web of lies and town secrets, facing threats along the way. Ultimately, Pip discovers that Andy Bell's real killer was her own father, Stuart Bell, who accidentally killed his daughter and framed Sal. The book exposes hidden crimes and shows how one girl can achieve justice. The setup: an old case, a new investigation, starting the deep dive. Imagine a small, seemingly idyllic town called Fairview, where 5 years ago a tragedy struck that shook everyone and forever changed the lives of its inhabitants. The local darling high school student Andy Bell mysteriously disappeared. Her disappearance caused a wave of panic and despair, as Andy was a symbol of purity and hope for many in Fairview. Very quickly, almost without question, her boyfriend Sal Singh was accused of her murder. He allegedly left a note confessing to the crime, and then his body was found in the woods, near where Andy was last believed to have been seen. The circumstances were so obvious that the case was officially closed. Sal was declared guilty, and his family, especially his younger brother Ravi Singh, remained stigmatized and ostracized. Their lives turned into a daily struggle against judgment and contempt. But one girl, named Pip Fitz-Amobi, whom everyone calls Pip, never believed the official version. Pip is not just a smart and clever high school student. She is the embodiment of determination and an uncompromising search for truth. She's preparing for college and chooses this closed case for her capstone project. Her goal isn't just to get a high grade. Her mission is to prove that Sal Singh was innocent. She's convinced that the real killer is still at large, hiding in the shadows of Fairview, and she intends to find them, despite all obstacles. Her intuition tells her that something about this story isn't right, and she won't stop until she unravels this old mystery. Pip's investigation: step by step, deep analysis and new discoveries. Pip begins her investigation with extraordinary systematicity, as if she were an experienced detective, not a high school student. She doesn't just collect scattered facts, she meticulously analyzes them, recording every, even the smallest detail in her project diary, which eventually becomes her personal Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This diary isn't just a notebook, it's a detailed chronological record of her discoveries, suspicions, hypotheses, and reflections, allowing her to keep the complex web of events in her mind. The first and most important step for Pip is interviewing Ravi Singh. His skepticism is understandable. For years, his family suffered from condemnation, and he doesn't believe anyone can change the town's established opinion, which is so deeply ingrained. But Pip, with her persuasive arguments and sincere belief in Sal's innocence, manages to convince him of her seriousness and unwavering resolve. She explains that she needs his help, his knowledge of his brother and his circle, to untangle this complex web of lies. Ravi, though somewhat reluctantly at first, agrees to help her. He himself never believed in his brother's guilt, and his agreement becomes Pip's first major success in this investigation, as it opens doors to information she would never have obtained on her own. Their relationship eventually grows into a strong friendship, based on a shared goal. Next, Pip focuses on Andy Bell's last days. She starts gathering the smallest details: her social circle, daily habits, favorite places, and most importantly, her secrets, which, as it turns out, were carefully hidden. She conducts dozens of interviews with everyone who had a connection to Andy and Sal. She talks to Andy's friends, her parents, teachers, neighbors, and even tries to reach out to the police officers who handled the case, although they show little desire to cooperate. And here, step by step, the first inconsistencies between the official version and what the witnesses tell her begin to emerge. Daniel De Silva, a local drug dealer with whom Andy, it turns out, was involved, becomes one of the first and most obvious suspects. Pip learns that Andy borrowed money from him, which already shatters her image as the perfect girl. This connection leads Pip to think about a dark side of Andy's life that no one knew about. Becca Bell, Andy's younger sister, seems strange. She acts very reserved, avoids certain topics, and gets too nervous when the topic of Andy comes up. Pip feels that Becca is hiding something, and her behavior is far from natural grief. This raises deep suspicion in Pip. Max Hastings, a popular athlete from school, turns out to be not such a flawless gentleman. Pip learns that he had violent tendencies and even committed sexual assault against several girls, and Andy may have known about it or even been his victim. This information shocks Pip and adds another layer to the already complex case, revealing dark sides of the town that were carefully concealed. New discoveries and grounds for doubt, destroying the official version. The deeper Pip digs, the more convinced she becomes that the Fairview police made not just a mistake, but perhaps consciously turned a blind eye to the truth. She finds evidence that was either ignored, misinterpreted, or even hidden. Each new fact, each inconsistency, like a brick, demolishes the edifice of the official version. Sal's mobile phone. It was found later, and there was no evidence on it linking him to Andy's murder. No calls to Andy that day. No strange messages. This raises the question of why the police so quickly concluded his guilt without checking this key item. Perhaps someone deliberately hid this phone, or deleted information from it so that it wouldn't prove Sal's innocence. Sal's note. The very note that was supposedly his confession and became the main evidence of his guilt turns out to be a forgery. Pip, thanks to her attention to detail, discovers that the handwriting doesn't quite match Sal's. She compares his schoolwork, old letters, and finds minor but crucial differences. This is key evidence that undermines the entire official version and directly indicates that someone tried to frame Sal. It was a deliberate act of falsification, alternative routes, and alibi. Pip finds evidence that Sal had an alibi on the day Andy disappeared, and his route didn't match what the police claimed. By talking to his friends in old, poor-quality surveillance footage, she can reconstruct his movements and prove that he was elsewhere at the critical moment. This definitively casts doubt on the entire police report. Pip and Ravi grow closer as they work together. Ravi, who was initially just a source of information, transforms into her reliable partner and support. He plays an important role by giving Pip access to information she wouldn't have obtained on her own, due to the resistance of local residents and the police. He also supports her emotionally when the investigation becomes dangerous and psychologically draining. They complement each other seamlessly. Pip is the sharp mind and analytical ability, and Ravi is the deep local knowledge, access to closed social circles, and invaluable emotional support. Their shared mission unites them. Danger mounts, playing with death. Pip's investigation does not go unnoticed. Someone in Fairview doesn't want her to dig up the truth. This someone begins to play dangerous games with her, trying to intimidate her and force her to stop. She starts receiving anonymous threats and warnings, subtle at first, and then increasingly explicit and menacing. Her belongings in her room are moved and rearranged, as if someone is entering her house. Messages on her phone are deleted, and her computer periodically glitches, making Pip suspect external interference. The most terrifying episode is an attempt to poison her dog. A small, innocent pet becomes a target, though it survives thanks to prompt veterinary action. This was a clear signal. Stop, or those dear to you will suffer. These events not only confirm that Pip is on the right track, but they also highlight the danger she's in. This someone isn't just trying to scare her, they're willing to do anything to hide their secret. This takes Pip's investigation to a whole new, dangerous level, where not only the truth, but also her own life is at stake. Unexpected twists, unveiling Fairview's dark sides. During her investigation, Pip uncovers a series of shocking facts that gradually form a complete picture of the tragedy. She realizes that the town of Fairview, with its attractive facade, hides many dark secrets. 1. The Bell family's secrets. It turns out that Andy Bell had far more secrets than initially appeared. She wasn't the perfect girl her parents and friends portrayed her to be. She led a double life, full of risk and questionable connections. 2. Teacher involvement and drugs. Pip discovers that Andy, along with her friend, became involved in the world of drugs. She wasn't just using them, but also selling them through her boyfriend. This part of her life was carefully hidden from everyone, especially her parents. Furthermore, Pip learns that someone among the adults, possibly even school staff, was involved in this drug network, or at least knew about it. 3. Unpleasant connections and blackmail. One of the most shocking discoveries is Andy's connection to Ben Reynolds, Sal Singh's brother, who worked as a teacher at the school. It turns out that Ben was Andy's secret lover. This wasn't just a romance. He had his own motives for concealing the truth, as his career and reputation would have been ruined. It becomes clear that Andy was blackmailing Ben, threatening to expose their relationship. This gives his silence a completely different meaning. 4. Diana Miller's death. Another tragic incident is the death of Diana Miller, one of Andy's friends, who died of a drug overdose around the same time Andy disappeared. Pip begins to suspect that these two events are not just related, but are links in the same chain. She believes that Diana knew something that threatened someone, and her death was not accidental. The climax, the shocking truth, unmasking the killer. Pip, having gathered all these disparate pieces of the puzzle, finally gets closer to the truth. She realizes that someone tried to convince everyone that Sal was guilty in order to hide the real killer, who was much closer than anyone could have imagined. This is not just a cover-up. It's a complex, well-thought-out conspiracy. The climax arrives when Pip, thanks to her tireless work and Ravi's help, discovers that the real killer of Andy Bell is her own father, Stuart Bell. This truth explodes like a bomb, shattering all illusions about the ideal Bell family. What actually happened? Stuart Bell, who was always obsessed with his family's reputation, found out about Andy's involvement in drugs and her connections with drug dealers. He was furious and feared that this scandal would ruin their flawless name and social status. On the night Andy disappeared, she and Stuart had a heated argument. In a fit of rage, perhaps under the influence of emotion or alcohol, he accidentally killed her. Perhaps he pushed her and she hit her head, or it was an unintentional act of strangulation. The important thing is that it was not a planned murder, but a tragic accident that turned into a crime. To cover up his crime and avoid disgrace, Stuart decided to pin everything on Sal. He knew about Sal's relationship with Andy, his drug problems, and that Sal was a convenient target for accusations. He forged Sal's confession note, meticulously imitating his handwriting, and planted it. When Sal's body, who had committed suicide, perhaps from a drug overdose or despair over the false accusations, was found in the woods, it became the perfect scenario for Stuart to complete his cover-up plan. He exploited another person's tragedy to hide his own. But that's not all. Pip also learns that Becca Bell, Andy's younger sister, witnessed the murder. She saw her father kill Andy. To protect him, or perhaps out of fear and trauma, she remained silent for 5 years, carrying this terrible burden. That's why she was so depressed, strange, and withdrawn. She carried the enormous weight of a secret that was eating her from within. Diana Miller's death also turns out to be related to this case. Diana knew about Andy's drug involvement and Stuart's connection to their distribution. She died of an overdose, but Pip is convinced that her death was also aided by someone who wanted her secret to remain undiscovered. Perhaps Stuart Bell or his accomplices pushed her to a fatal dose to silence her forever. Consequences and conclusion. Justice and a new beginning. Pip, having gathered all this compelling evidence, presents it to the police. At first, they don't believe her, as the case has long been closed and no one wants to admit mistakes. But her persistence, logic, and irrefutable evidence, gathered through her project, forced them to reopen the case. Testimonies, records, handwriting analysis, recreation of events. All of this creates a flawless picture. Ultimately, under the weight of the evidence and thanks to her unwavering will, Pip achieves justice. Stuart Bell is arrested. This case not only proves Sal Singh's innocence, but also exposes deep corruption, incompetence, and indifference within the Fairview justice system. Sal Singh, though dead, receives a posthumous exoneration. His name is cleared of disgrace, and the Singh family, who suffered years of condemnation, can finally breathe a sigh of relief. They receive not just exoneration, but a certain reconciliation with the past. For Pip, this investigation changes everything. She didn't just complete a school project, she exposed a real killer, brought justice, and showed that a good girl can be the most formidable detective. She realizes that the world isn't black and white, and that behind perfect facades, terrible secrets can hide. She also understands the price of truth, and that it often comes at a high cost. Her life will never be the same again. She witnessed true evil and realized that the fight for justice can be dangerous, but absolutely necessary. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is not just a detective story. It's a captivating tale of how one girl, armed only with her wits, determination, and unwavering belief in the truth, managed to challenge the established order, uncover an old mystery, and get to the truth, even when everyone else refused to look for it. It's a reminder that sometimes the most obvious answers are the least true, and that the world is not always what it seems at first glance. Sometimes, to find the light, you have to look into the darkest corners.